through one so small, you seem so strong. My arms will hold you, keep you safe and warm. This bond between us can't be broken. That's a great fucking song.
I will be here, don't you cry. Guess it sucks.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Ash, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Kevin Brackett,
Lilu Dallas Multipass,
and Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. And if you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we will provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie would take to get off our respective butts. So thank you for listening, and if you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, and currently working our way through Westworld. Find all of the information or past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. Finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch. We play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. Now, with all that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So today I'm excited. We're going to a genre that I think might now be our most underserved. This will be only our 6th animated films. Before we've done Roger Rabbit, Toy Story 2, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Transformers the movie, and Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So we were very excited when two of our great listeners, Marco P. and Flavor Dave, decided to commission the 1999 animated comedy, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And Flavor Dave, in typical fashion, short, sweet, to the point here, and said, I watched this back when I was like 13 at a friend's house, barely remembered it. I was so stoned. But over the years, it's become my favorite cartoon of all time, quotable for days. Sorry, I wanted to send a voicemail, but I'm currently working at my second job. Tough times, y'all. Stay great and stay shatty, Shat fam. Flavor Dave.
So I think this is going to be an episode where our age gaps have an impact on this film because along with Flavor Dave and you guys, I assume you saw this when you were younger. I was much older at the time this came out.
Yeah, I was 14. So I was just entering high school.
and I was 12, I think, almost 13. So I was right at Flavor Dave age.
Well, I think like the cartoon of your childhood really defines your childhood, right? Like for me, it was South Park and Beavis and Butthead. And then you've got like Finn, now my son, who was really into the cartoon of my brother's generation, which was SpongeBob. And like me, I can't stand SpongeBob because I was the South Park, Beavis and Butthead group. Whereas like Finn, I mean, obviously we haven't showed him either of those shows yet, but like, he's embraced the SpongeBob era. And I don't know, just wasn't as cool, guys. Well, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut is a 1999 animated musical comedy directed by series creator Trey Parker from a screenplay by Parker, series co-creator Matt Stone, and Pam Brady. The plot follows Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny as they sneak into an R-rated film starring the Canadian comedy duo Terrance and Phillip, after which they begin swearing. When the consequent moral panic culminates in the United States declaring war on Canada, Stan, Kyle, and Cartman take it upon themselves to save Terrance and Phillip from execution, while Kenny tries to prevent a prophecy involving Satan and Saddam Hussein's intent to conquer the world. The film received generally positive reviews from critics who praised its story, soundtrack, humor, and themes. Produced on a $20 million budget, it grossed $83.1 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing R-rated animated film until Sausage Party debuted in 2016. At the 72nd Academy Awards, the song Blame Canada was nominated for Best Original Song, but lost to Phil Collins's You'll Be in My Heart from Tarzan. So before we get started, we always like to ask, where were you and what are your memories of this movie? So Big D, Dick Ebert, why don't you start us off?
So like I mentioned, South Park debuted in August of 97 on Comedy Central. They had 6 episodes. I was 24 at the time, and I think I was too old for it. You know, it was aimed, I think, at a younger audience. But I can understand completely why it was popular. It was pushing the boundaries. It was controversial. It was a cartoon, much like my Beavis and Butthead, that parents hated, that parents didn't get, that the topics were very topical, what kids were into. I didn't consider myself a huge fan, but I can completely understand what the draw of the series was.
Hey, sir, it was my Beavis and Butthead, too. It was all of our Beavis and Buttheads. But as far as South Park goes, I love South Park. I have loved South Park since the very first episode of South Park that I saw on Comedy Central. It was something completely unlike anything I had ever seen before, and it was one of the funniest things that I had ever seen before. And I saw this movie as soon as it came out. I remembered loving it then, but I was really worried about going back to watch it. South Park was already really offensive in the 90s. Like, I remember the news stories about it. I remember people that quit the show, people that got angry at the show. I mean, can we all just say for a second, the Trapped in the Closet episode is a perfect example of that. But it was brilliant, but it was offensive then. So I was worried about what a few decades would do to this movie. But spoiler alert to all of you in the Shatverse out there, I fucking laughed my ass off for every second of this movie.
Yeah, I was close to the same age as Ash, so I was a big fan of South Park. I think we were right in the sweet spot where the show was intended to be so over the top and offensive, and kids our age were going to cling to it, and it would be the talk of the schoolyard, and it was what everybody was watching. So I was really into the show. And I remember when this movie was coming out that my best friend Kyle and I, we had to beg our parents to let us into it because they had to buy the tickets. And so it was like days of pleading, please, come on, we watched the show. It can't be that bad, so on and so forth. And so finally they gave in. And I think it was Kyle's mom who bought us the tickets and dropped us off. And the rest is history. And I thought it was so funny back then, and it's just as funny today. Like Ash said, I cannot believe how well it held up. I'm excited to get into all this, but watching it as an adult, you get to take in so much more, like how meta the movie is. And that is what still makes South Park great to this day.
Well, let's head to Colorado to our quiet little mountain town, and Big D, roll that trailer.
Once upon a time, a man drew a little mouse, and his animated vision enchanted children of all ages. This summer, that man will be spinning in his grave.
Oh my God, why?
Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers present
Dude, sweet.
South Park,
This is gonna be the best movie ever. Yay!
invading
Eric, did you just say the F word?
Did he say the S word?
Young man, did you just say the Q word? We have to get you children off of foul language.
your theater.
The machinery of the V-chip emits a small shock of electricity whenever an obscenity is uttered.
This summer,
You're late, Cartman. I had to ride my back here. My behind is killing me. You're behind? I have to stay behind because I get shocked if I say...
Kyle Broslovsky,
This is sweet.
Stan Marsh,
Where do they come up with this stuff?
Eric Cartman,
That movie has warped my fragile little mind.
Kenny McCormick, Shat,
Have you ever heard of the Emancipation Proclamation?
I don't listen to hip-hop.
Satan,
Is sex the only thing that matters to you?
Yeah! I love you.
and Big Gay Al.
You big fillies!
On June 30th,
Throw the switch, Mr. Garrison.
Hey, I'm supposed to be anonymous.
it's not just another day in the park.
Son, we accidentally replaced your heart with a baked potato. You have about 3 seconds to live.
South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut.
Tell him we'll have punch and pie. We're not gonna have punch and pie. My bill will come if they think we have punch and pie. Ooh. We've got to see this movie, dude.
One morning in South Park, Stan Marsh, Kyle Broflovsky, and his adopted brother Ike, Eric Cartman, and Kenny McCormick visit the movie theater to see Terrance and Phillip's new film, Asses of Fire. When they are denied tickets to the R-rated film, the boys pay a homeless man to accompany them. After watching the film, the boys begin swearing constantly. Their friends are impressed and also decide to see the film, except for Wendy, who becomes acquainted with transfer student Gregory to Stan's jealousy.
So you can't talk about this movie without talking about the controversy and talking about the MPA and the ratings of it, that it was an R-rated movie. And the MPA, it always seems arbitrary how they rate films. It's people's opinion. You know, you can show tons of naked women, tits, ass, vagina, everything, naked dudes. You can't show an erect penis. I found out in my research that an erect penis will immediately get you an NC-17. But the only other real hard rule they have is the use of
nice one. Hard.
Is fuck. Oh, you're stuck. I didn't even think of that. Their hard, uncut rule is that you can't use the utterance of fuck. It'll get you an automatic R. If you use it for anything sexual, it can be one utterance, like a fuck, but you can't be like, fuck you, or I'm going to fuck you in the ass. Those will get you an R right away. But I got to argue. The word fuck, I think it is one of the most versatile words in the English language. It can be a verb, an adverb, a noun, an adjective, a modifier, an intensifier, or even an interjection. So Emma is 6 years old. I'm putting her to bed one day, and she looks over at me, and she goes, Daddy, I learned a bad word. I said, okay, what was it? And she goes, fuck. And she said it perfectly, dramatically. It was, and I said, wow, okay, well, that's kind of like a word like poopy. I said it's kind of like a dirty word that people will use that word for a lot of different things. And I tried to explain to her that she's going to hear it. She'll probably say it. And there's times to say it and times she shouldn't say it. But to me, it's hard because I think this word is so useful. You can use it at almost anything. And I think it gets a bad stigma that it doesn't deserve.
So for any listener of the podcast, as I'm sure you can tell, I have a horrible mouth. I've always had a horrible mouth. Part of it is just coming from New Orleans. We curse a lot. And so fuck is one of my favorite words for much of the same reasons that you were talking about, Big D. It is quite useful, although I would argue adverb and adding fuckingly. I don't know if that fuckly. I don't know if that one works, but the others definitely do. And when we decided to have children, this was a big concern of mine. Is it's like, I mean, fuck makes up probably 30% of the words that I say on a daily basis. And I was like, what are we going to do? You know, I can't be one of those parents that says fudge sickle or oh, fudge pop, you know, instead of fuck, because it's just a better word. And so we have this philosophy with our children that I try to control my cursing just because I don't want them to think that they're the only words to use. But we have conversations with our kids about we call adult words and we call non-adult words. And we talk about how mom can't say fuck at work. I can't go to work and be like, well, you know what? Fuck you to my boss. And we talk about, you know, the use of those words and when to use them. And I don't know, for me, it's kind of like, they're going to be exposed to it. They're going to listen to it. And I'd rather them hear it from me that, hey, when you're 13, because that's the rule in our house, you can start using some of these words as long as you use them appropriately and as long as you don't use them towards your parents.
Oh boy, I have a 13-year-old as of last week. So
there you go. You can start fuck, everything. Fuckity, fuck.
So doing some research for this film, I read that the MPAA actually has a rule where if you have 400 curse words, it will earn you an automatic NC-17. So like Big D said, they play fast and loose with the rules and mix and match things, and sometimes you just can't even tell what they're going to do. But allegedly, the story goes that they made sure this movie had 399 curse words exactly in it.
Oh, it makes sense, but it's a complete joke. I was reading an article about Hamilton, the film version, that Disney, they got an R rated because it had 3 uses of the word fuck. So they had to trim it down to 1. It's ridiculous. You get movies out there where people are blowing each other's heads off. Okay, that's PG. That's okay, but God forbid, don't say fuck.
Yeah, or like the new Jurassic Park. I mean, guys, I took both kids to see that. And while Finn handled it beautifully, that was a really scary film for a little girl like Ellie. And, you know, I'd rather her hear fuck than to be terrified of a raptor. But one thing about South Park, its language aside, is that this movie's many things, but most of all for me, it is such a smart and really well done musical. And it makes sense that these two guys, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, would go on to find success on Broadway with the absolutely amazing Book of Mormon. It's a fantastic musical. If you've never seen it, you should go and see it because it's so funny. And they know how to structure a musical, and they open it up with this small number, my quiet mountain town, and it builds the way the opening of like Beauty and the Beast does, where Belle is walking through her small provincial town, and we get to know, you know, the people and the streets and the ideas. And while this is obviously funnier than Beauty and the Beast, it's just as smart, and the music quality, in my opinion, is just as good. And the best part is that they structure it in a way that you don't have to have seen the South Park show at all. Now, obviously, you're going to get more of the callback jokes. You're going to get the, oh shit, we killed Kenny, you know, if you've seen the show. But the movie works on its own because they use this opening song as like an exposition that all these new people that may have wound up in the theater kind of would need.
And Ash, you know, I famously hate musicals.
I
despise them. So surprisingly, the movie opens up and I'm getting the song and I'm thinking just like you, it's Beauty and the Beast. I'm liking it. It's getting us into the world. I'm enjoying it. It's moving along. But, and again, this might be my hatred of musicals as a whole, but I felt the songs went from being funny and being used as exposition into just filler. There's 13 songs. Okay, some of them work, some of them don't. So I've ranked them in my own personal order here, and I'm going to share them with you, okay? So at number 13, I've got, surprisingly, Uncle Fucker. I didn't think it was that original. I liked number 12, which was Eyes of My Child, performed by the legendary Michael McDonald. 11, Hell Isn't Good. It's Kenny's little number. 10, I have Wendy's song, There's That Girl I Like. Number 9, I Can Change. 8, It's Easy. Okay. 7, Mountain Town. 6, Up There. 5, Kyle's Mom's a Bitch. 4, La Resistance. 3, I'm Super.
Thanks
2,
for asking.
What Would Brian Boitano Do? And number 1 has to be Blame Canada. But as a whole, some of the songs work, some of them don't. But again, you had to fill up an hour of 20 minutes, and it can't be just cut and paste animation, dropping F-bombs.
Well, I didn't even remember this thing was a musical. Obviously, at the time I did, but so many years have passed where I haven't watched this and I've just watched the show that I had completely forgotten that. So when it opens with that number, and I'm a big musical guy and Disney animation guy, so I was picking up on the Beauty and the Beast connection, and then the Oklahoma connection with Uncle Fucker, and then, of course, with the Les Mis number. So it was great to get these songs again. And I realized as every song started, I could recite all of the words in my head for something that I didn't even remember was a musical. It's amazing how good the songs are. That's a testament to the songwriting and the music. The music is by a guy named Mark Shaman, and he does a phenomenal job because this is not just a good South Park movie, but it's a good musical that happens to be about South Park. So I was really impressed with that. And one of the funny things I noticed when I was watching this and realized, well, wait, this isn't called South Park the Musical. That would have been a perfect name for it. They were going back and forth with a couple of different titles for this thing. Originally, Trey Parker and Matt Stone wanted it to be called South Park All Hell Breaks Loose. That doesn't seem like a bad title. It explains, like, here we're going from the show and you know what this is, but now all hell breaks loose. They can curse, whatever. The MPAA would not allow the word hell in the title. And so they changed it to a double entendre for penis. Bigger, longer, and uncut. So I think that speaks perfectly to what Big D said about the MPAA. What are their rules? What do they allow and don't allow? It makes no sense.
It doesn't. It makes absolutely no sense. And I love that they're going to fight that, but they allow a song like Uncle Fucker to exist. Because I completely disagree with you, Big D. Uncle Fucker fucking slaps. This is a great song. And here's why I love it. All good kids movies have a lame-ass song that every kid wants to play 1,000 times. Think Let It Go from Frozen, The Abomination that is We Don't Talk About Bruno from Encanto, and then the Everything is Awesome from the Lego movie that makes me want to die. All of those are terrible, but my children sing them constantly. And in this, Uncle Fucker is that song. And if they all sounded like Uncle Fucker, I think I'd be okay. Because I have been singing this song constantly since I got to watch it on rewatch. Where like I'm just sitting at work and I'm like, such a fucking face, Uncle Fucker. Like, I mean, it's hilarious.
Well, it works if you have the two animated characters. The two animated characters singing it in like their music. Yes, I like that. And you know what you said, Kevin, that this was like a legit musical. I could not believe it was nominated for an Academy Award. Didn't win it, but it did win an MTV Movie Award for the best musical performance in 2000. And the song was not originally titled Uncle Fucker. It was originally titled Motherfucker, but the MPA again stepped in and said, you can't do this. We're going to give you an NC-17. So they were forced to change it to Uncle Fucker.
Oh, and that's so much better. How
so much better, so much better. And Trey and Matt said they were glad it happened because they said the song is much better with Uncle Fucker.
Oh, it's so much funnier. It's just so random and obscure. And I agree with Ash, though. That song is awesome. And I cannot get these songs out of my head. And I love how this movie is Trey and Matt finally getting to run wild, though, with the stuff they could not say on Comedy Central. And nowadays it's funny because you're watching this and it seems tame compared to shows today. Adult animation is so raunchy today. But that's only because South Park paved the way for that to happen. And the entire Uncle Fucker song, like we were talking about, is them testing the limits. It is hilarious to see them go on and on and on with endless curse words in this ridiculous fashion. And it's such a middle finger to the censors and the MPAA. And you can just tell that behind the scenes, those two guys were having a blast writing this song and then seeing it come to fruition.
Yeah, and I think today we get more meta and nuanced comedy that pushes the boundaries in different ways. Here, they were, like you said, they were just shoving them back and putting it in their face and putting it out there. And that this was an R-rated movie, and that, Kevin, you've just reinforced your reputation as one of the nicest guys on the planet, that you actually went to your parents and convinced them to buy tickets. I was like sneaking into movies. There's no way I was going to ask my parents, but I could picture you like writing out an outline, doing a presentation on why this movie would be okay to go out and see this. And it reminded me of something that happened to me in my real life. I've mentioned it on one of the podcasts in the past. I don't remember which one it was, but when the boys go and they get the homeless guy and they bribe him to get the tickets, ass is on fire. I remembered a trick that I played on my grandmother. And at the time, I could not believe, going back and finding out, that the movie I tricked her into seeing, which was called So Fine, came out in 1981. I was only 8 years old when I did this. My grandmother was going to take me out for a nice, grandmother, grandson day. I said, oh, let's go see So Fine. She didn't know that this was the American sex comedy written and directed by Andrew Bergman about a professor and his father who works in the garment industry. And he invents jeans that have no ass flaps. Okay. I tricked my grandmother. We sat in there and she was disgusted staring at me. And about 20 minutes in, there's a sex scene where the topless girl's on the couch and the guy's grabbing her tits. And she grabbed me at 8 years old. And just like the rest of the crowd in South Park, stormed out of the theater. Well, I can't believe I did that at 8. What was I thinking? Have either of you, I know Kevin would ask for permission, but Ash, did you ever get in trouble or do something like this?
So I didn't have to do this because my parents let me see way inappropriate movies when I was a kid. Like my dad was the one taking me to go see like Speed in the theater when I was like 10 years old. So as long as it didn't have overt sex, my parents could care less. That was their thing. They were like the MPAA. If there was a titty or if there was a pee-pee, Ashley wasn't seeing it. But the fuckity fuck, let's kill all the people, they would have had no issues with. So I didn't have to do this, man, but I wish I had. It feels like it would have been so much more fun.
But just so you guys can understand, scroll to the top of our outline here and look at the movie poster. I've attached it.
Yeah.
I saw that. I didn't know what that was when you posted that. That's wild.
What? My poor grandmother. Why would I do that to her?
Yeah.
That's twisted, man. So I was much like Ash's parents were. My mom was fine with me watching stuff, especially she would rent it for me at the video store. So like RoboCop, which we know how super violent RoboCop is. She rented that for me at the grocery store when they used to have a video rental place. And I remember my uncle took it away from me. She rented it for me and my uncle took it away. Like, you should not be watching this. So that was one of my sad childhood moments that I still always will remember.
It's amazing. The children are forbidden from seeing the film again, but do so multiple times. Kenny sets his fart on fire, imitating a scene from the film, and accidentally immolates himself. He's rushed to the hospital where he dies from a botched heart transplant. He descends into hell, wherein he encounters Satan and his abusive partner, Saddam Hussein. Meanwhile, Kyle's mother, Sheila, forms the Mothers Against Canada movement with other parents, and Terrance and Phillip are arrested as war criminals. And Canada bombs the Baldwins in retaliation. After insulting Sheila, Cartman is implanted with a V-chip, which administers an electric shock whenever he swears.
So we kind of touched upon this with what Big D was saying about the MPAA, but again, this movie is so smart and clever with their satire and their meta commentary on curse words because and just like what Ash was saying, it's like, what does it matter? These are words, and Cartman even says in the movie, "What's the big deal? It doesn't hurt anybody," which is so true. And yet, curse words will be seen as such this horrible thing, but then violence, right? It's nothing. It doesn't even matter. So the ridiculousness of it and the hilarity of the Mothers Against Canada staging a full-fledged war over the detainment of Terrance and Phillip, which leads to the bombing of the Baldwins and the scheduled execution of Terrance and Phillip. It's so ridiculous and over the top, but so is the war on movies and music and video games, and I think it's a brilliant satire.
I completely agree. And I think what I forgot about South Park is not just the brilliance and the satire, but the brilliance and the randomness that they use to create that satire. Because the way South Park works best is in these little random moments where you go, what the fuck are you talking about? And it makes no sense, but it's so funny. Because yes, the plot of this movie is hilarious. Of course, the fight with Canada is good, but these random references are incredible. And the perfect example for me of this is who the Canadians choose to bomb. The Baldwins. Like, what a random choice that they bombed the Baldwin brothers. But when you watch it, you can't help but think that clearly this is the only option they could have chosen, was that we would bomb the Baldwins. And the same thing in scenes like where Cartman's singing about Kyle's mom being a big fat bitch, and all of a sudden he's in Africa, and then he's back in Colorado. Again, makes no sense, but it is just comedy genius.
Yeah, blackface Cartman, that one kind of shocked me. I was
God.
like, whoa, hold on here a minute. Or Chinese Cartman. I was like, whoa.
I mean, like, but again, just singing constantly, Kyle's mom is a big fat bitch, she's a big fat, like, I mean, it just makes no sense, but it's so good.
Well, the other thing that you have to realize, too, with the Cartman stuff, and obviously that stuff isn't going to happen today, most likely. If anyone could do it, South Park, but still, they even cut back on that stuff. But you're not supposed to think Cartman's a good person. And that's what I always have to remind my son as he watches South Park now. And I say, okay, I know this stuff is funny, but you have to realize Cartman is the butt of the joke. Cartman's a bad person. Blazing Saddles, that stuff is funny, and you're not condoning what the people are saying. Those racist bigots are the bad people. It's the same with Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker is not a good person. You're supposed to realize he's in the wrong with everything he does. So I think that is the only way they get away with it, is it is actually pointing out how ridiculous and bad and wrong Cartman is.
And a lot of these jokes, though, it kind of hit me how old this film is. In my head, I still think of 99 as not that long ago. I'm like, okay, 2000, okay, I can remember what I was doing. But when you see the jokes and the topical nature that South Park always has, you realize that there's a Bill Gates Windows 98 joke that I said, holy shit. Windows 98 was like brand new when this movie came out. Saddam Hussein. A lot of these jokes about the Baldwins, it's all topical to the time. But for me, the obscure joke that I got, maybe because I was a little, was the Brooke Shields, who's on the Conan O'Brien show, and she's trying to fit in with Terrance and Phillip, and she says, I once farted on the set of Blue Lagoon, to which he pauses and then slaps her in the face. Today, I would guarantee you that nobody knows who Brooke Shields is.
So one of the other things I found funny was who was actually doing the voices in this movie. So, of course, Matt and Trey do most of the voices, but they got people like George Clooney to be in a small throwaway gag, which seems so beneath him as being an A-list actor of the time. And I get it with his popularity from ER and, of course, having to be the doctor. It's great. But still, I remember even at the time, I go, George Clooney is in a South Park movie? Totally blew my mind at the time. And the other star power they have Eric Idle, Minnie Driver, who I think was Brooke Shields that you just mentioned, and Brent Spiner played Conan O'Brien, who's, of course, from Star Trek, and Mike Judge is Kenny Unhooded. So random. It's one line in the movie, and he just sounds like a voice that Matt or Trey would do. So it's like they didn't even need to get him, but I think that was a nice homage because, like Big D said, with Beavis and Butthead, and he was, of course, so revolutionary in that way for animation, it's cool that he lent his voice to a character even for that one line.
Yeah, I mean, and they didn't just have balls on who they casted they just had balls in what they chose to do. Because, guys, I forgot about these hell scenes. And the hell scenes for me are the best in this movie. Making Saddam Hussein the lover of a super gay Satan is incredible. And knowing when this came out and what would happen with Saddam, like just a few years later, it made all this like even sweeter. Because when Satan asked Saddam, why do you have to belittle me in front of other people? Like, I still could not stop laughing. I remember being 14 and thinking this was the funniest thing I had ever seen. And I didn't even get the politics. And now that I get the politics, it's even funnier.
I mean, if you think now, again, how innocent this film looks, go to 2014, The Interview. Look at the fallout of that when you made fun of Kim Jong-un.
Mm-hmm.
That led to the hack of Sony servers. It led to a lot of turnover within the studio. Death threats to where the movie got pulled from the theaters because they were afraid of terrorism. It's the back in the quaint 1999 when you could mock an evil despot, a dictator who was like killing his own people, and it was funny. And I could not believe this when I did some research that Matt and Trey created the movie, and a couple years later in 2006, they got an autographed, signed picture from Saddam Hussein. When the Marines had caught him and were holding him before they executed him, they forced him to watch the movie over and over and over again. So the fact that Saddam was forced to watch his big gay scenes with the devil and pulling out his little fake penis, I would love to have heard what he thought before he died.
Well, and how about making him sign an autograph after all that, too?
Oh, man.
It's amazing. Well, Satan prophesies that a U.S.-Canada war is a sign of the apocalypse, and upon Terrance and Phillip's deaths, he will invade and conquer Earth. Kenny's ghost visits Cartman to warn him. Stan, Kyle, and Cartman form a resistance movement with their classmates to rescue Terrance and Phillip. Kyle hides Ike in their family's attic as Canadians are sent to internment camps. Stan and Kyle are tasked with stalling Terrance's and Phillip's execution, while Cartman attempts to deactivate the alarm. However, Kenny's ghost reappears before Cartman, frightening him into forgetting his task. The boy's ally, Christoph the Mole, is discovered and fatally mauled by guard dogs.
I know you guys mentioned it earlier, but I think something most people forget, the songs in this movie are so good. And I know we talked a little bit about the whole thing at the Oscars with Tarzan, but what I clearly recall in my head, my memories from when I watched the Oscars live, was Robin Williams coming out to sing Blame Canada, which I thought was so great. I was a huge Robin Williams fan, of course still am, but I, as a kid growing up, was a huge fan of him. And to see him come out and do this song for this movie that I had seen was great. It was this huge dance number with a big cast on stage and everything. And yeah, they lost to Tarzan, but South Park will forever be an Oscar-nominated movie, and that really speaks again to the quality of the songs.
So, Ash, a few weeks ago, I recall you mocking me when I started to sing, "Through one so small, you seem so strong. My arms will hold you, keep you safe and warm. This bond between us can't be broken." That's a great fucking song.
I will be here. Yes. Don't you cry. Because it sucks.
No, it doesn't.
I want you to tell me, do you want "You'll be in my heart," or do you want "Shut your fucking face, Uncle Fucker"? I mean, it's so much better.
Well, one of them won the Oscar and one of them didn't. That's all I got to say.
Hey, awards aren't everything, all right?
Yeah. Let's also remember that terrible song from A Star Is Born, where Lady Gaga basically groans into a mic for 3 seconds, also won an Oscar. So, you know.
Well, I want to go back to a part of this movie that hit me in my particular wheelhouse that I loved. The biggest laugh I got was General Plimpkin. He is the fat, bald U.S. Army officer who's in charge of planning the assault on Canada. And he's obviously racist, okay? Because his plan is he's got all the African Americans in Battalion 5. They're going to act as human shields and protect the tanks, the planes. They're strapping them onto the sides of vehicles. And he says, you know what, this all important first wave of defense, which we're going to call Operation Human Shield. And they pan and you see Chef and you see all the other members of Battalion 5 are in shock. And he says, you know, keep this in mind. Operation Human Shield will suffer heavy losses, but don't lose your spirit. You got to stay until the bitter end when Battalion 14, who's all white guys, they're going to execute Operation Get Behind Darkies. Now, this humor today probably wouldn't be in the movie, but again, who am I to judge? I laughed at the shit just because of the way I know that the military works and the way that life works. And Chef's response to this and the Emancipation Proclamation joke, it made it okay for me, and I laughed.
See, I don't know. I think it still would get into a movie today. Like, that's the thing. I think that when the intention behind it is to make a joke that is relevant and true and that we can all laugh alongside these characters, I think it would make it in. And this joke, unfortunately, still has a lot of relevance in the world that we're living in. And I think it's hilarious. And what I love about Trey Parker and Matt Stone is that the amount of social commentary that they provide in their humor is so incredibly smart. I mean, Saddam was chosen intentionally. Jokes like this get made intentionally. It's like this weird mocking of that movie Glory with Matthew Broderick, where he gets off the horse at the end and they all march in and die. Like, it's talking about things that really happen, that still happen in so many ways. And I don't know. I think if it's done with the intention to hurt people, then no, it wouldn't get in. But this is done with the intention to hurt the racists. So I say more jokes like this, please.
The problem is not with the joke; it's with the people watching it and misunderstanding it.
True.
That is where you get into trouble. Is people would be protesting this movie because of that very reason, without even understanding it, and certainly wouldn't have seen it either. But, another shocker for me was how early on this film went into production. After the first season of South Park, they were planning this movie right out of the gate, right after that first short season. And during the second and third season is when they were writing it and planning it and producing it simultaneously. And I think that really speaks to the strength of the show, that first season, even if it isn't as good as what was to come, it was good enough to where they handed them the keys to the kingdom and said, you can make a motion picture and we're going to let you do it R-rated. They, of course, wanted PG-13 at first to sell more tickets, but Trey and Matt had so much pull, they were able to tell Paramount, no, it's going to be rated R. It's going to have the curse words, or we're not going to do the movie. And they knew that they had to make this movie because of how popular the show was. So it really speaks to the strength of the show, to the creators, and Comedy Central is willing to trust them with what they thought would be the best. And the show's still around, so it looks like they made the right call.
I agree. And I think it cannot be overstated the path that they paved for other R-rated movies, not just R-rated animated films, but other R-rated films and genres that typically were linked with like PG-13 films, like superhero movies, like a Deadpool may not have ever happened if it hadn't have been for the success of something like South Park, because they also had to fight for that to be an R-rated film. And if you're as big of a fan of Deadpool as I am, that movie would have been such a lesser film if it had been a PG or a PG-13 movie. The same, I think, is true here. You can't do this type of comedy in a PG-13 kind of, barricade where you're stuck between these rules. And this movie is so funny because of its irreverence, and irreverence can only happen with an R rating.
And look how long it took for things to change where they would take more risks on R-rated movies. I think the record for the highest grossing rated R movie of all time was Beverly Hills Cop. That's from the 80s. And it took all the way until The Hangover to outgross it as the highest R-rated movies. So that's how long studios were not going to let R-rated movies get made, because they knew PG-13 would bring in more money.
The remaining boys try to warn their mothers about Satan's prophecy, but are ignored as the execution commences. The Canadian Army launches a surprise attack, resulting in a massive battle between the two armies. When Cartman deactivates the electrical switch, allowing Terrance and Phillip to escape, the shock from the switch causes his V-chip to malfunction. Stan chases after them, but is knocked out in an explosion. Members of MAC, horrified at what they incited, decide to abandon their cause, with only Sheila remaining committed.
Now, here's my only complaint with this movie, and it's a small one. It's a nitpick, but it kind of goes against my instincts for what the South Park humor is going to be. Mothers Against Canada, MAC. Where's the joke? I'm surprised they didn't go with something funny. It was clearly a play on like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD. It seems like a missed opportunity for a joke. Usually these organizations spell out something funny or self-depreciating of. So I was just surprised that it was like MAC, because I'm thinking, well, what is that? That's not funny. It's just an abbreviation.
Yeah, well, I mean, or like SAC. South Park against Canada.
Exactly.
Like, that would have been funnier. Right?
Do you see what I'm saying? So that was the only surprise to me, is I'm like, oh, what's it going to be called? MAC. Okay. What? That's not okay.
Well, we've got the other group here, which is La Resistance. And I have to say, the Les Mis connection and the Les Mis parody here is by far one of my favorite parts of this movie. So Les Mis is one of my favorite musicals of all time. And I love the way they parody it without being too on the nose. So you've got the French kid, you've got his insane quips like my mother doesn't love me. If she did, she wouldn't have poked me with that coat hanger. It's so hilarious. And then his little song that's a direct copy of Little Drops of Rain. If you're not familiar with Les Mis, it's the one where Eponine is dying in Marius's arms and she does, oh, don't you fight, Monsieur Marius? And it's such a great parody of that. I was obsessed with this entire section of the movie. And Kevin, I am so glad that you're with us this week. But this is the only part I wanted to share with Gene was us geeking out over Les Mis. But Kevin, you like musicals too, right?
I love musicals and I love Les Mis. It's one of my favorites. I've seen it on the national tour of Les Mis multiple times, and I actually like the movie. I know some people don't, but I really like the movie, the recent film, I should say, with Russell Crowe and Hugh Jackman. So I thought this part was great. My appreciation for Les Mis has only grown since I first saw the film, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought I was laughing out loud too with the kid and all of his lines, very cleverly written.
Well, and also, it's just so nobody writes in. Yes, I also recognize it was another parody of One Day More as well as they're preparing to go to battle. I mean, it's so good.
But I can also picture little Gene wanting to be the mole, wanting to be that kid that's so different that's going to just, fight against the cause. Yes, poke me with the coat hanger. But Ash, you got to tell me here, right here. Okay, Gregory, that is Maxwell Caulfield, right? From Grease 2.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be that little bastard.
It is not.
I hated him as much in cartoon form as I did riding his little motorcycle.
Oh my God. Why do you always find a way to kill all of the dreams of my life? Grease 2 is amazing. It's one of the most underrated films of all time. And you know what? He is a sexy, sexy, cool writer, and you just can't handle it.
Again, just watching two armies fighting over a movie that has cursing in it, laugh out loud funny to me. It's so ridiculous in the Trey Parker, Matt Stone fashion, and why we love South Park. So meanwhile, the MPAA rated this thing NC-17 5 out of 6 times over language. But violence is fine. Trey Parker told a story in an interview about in the original trailer, they would not allow certain words, even the words hell, basic curse words, that sort of thing. But then there was footage of the soldiers shooting each other in that trailer. So it just goes back to what we said before, what the MPAA picks and chooses to allow in the films and the trailers. It's ridiculous, but the entire movie is a meta commentary about the film industry, about the MPAA, and it's so smartly written when it comes to what people are offended by. And it goes right back to that MAC group, the mothers, how ridiculous it is and what lengths they will go to defend their children from nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously had no issue with a sentient clitoris. Talking to one of the main characters of this film, and just
they probably didn't know what it was.
Well, yeah, couldn't find it. Oh, where is the clitoris? I mean, but they have no issue with a cafeteria worker telling a bunch of elementary school kids that they got to go find the clitoris. But man, fuck is a bad word.
That I'll tell you, that's a joke that went over my head when I was 12.
But the clitoris?
You didn't go home and ask somebody what the clitoris
What's the clitoris,
was?
Mom? You let me go see this movie.
All the kids were us kids watching the movie when they saw it, right? Because the kids have no idea what they're talking about. And it's so funny. That is how meta the film is. There's so much stuff in the way the kids act. And it's actually the kids sneaking into the movie with the homeless guy, like Big D said his stories used to be. And the mothers getting outraged over video games and music and all the violence and stuff. That's such a commentary on that. So I did not appreciate the meta nature. And people weren't really talking about meta back then. But this movie is so meta.
I just thought the clitoris should have been tiny. She should have been little.
No, she should be big. She's so important.
I agree. She's important.
Mm-hmm.
But the boys should have gone on a quest and found her. And then they learned the secrets
Grail
of the clitoris. Yes.
No,
and they went home and shared it.
It's funny because it's so ridiculous. They just pick. We talked about, I think Ash said it earlier, that their humor is so random. And that's what's funny. You would not have predicted a sentient clitoris
like 9 foot tall.
It's great.
Sam reawakens before a sentient clitoris, speaking of, and leads the others to shield Terrance and Phillip from the U.S. Army. While the soldiers begin to back down, Sheila shoots Terrance and Phillip dead. Saddam usurps Satan and demands that everyone bow to him. When Saddam insults Cartman, Cartman releases bolts of energy from his hands. He's attacked Saddam until Satan becomes enraged and throws Saddam back into hell. Grateful for Kenny's support, Satan grants him one wish. Kenny wishes for everything to return to a pre-war state and disappears. South Park is restored as the casualties are undone. As Americans and Canadians make peace, Sheila reconciles with Kyle, as does Wendy with Stan. For his sacrifice, Kenny is allowed entry into heaven. Okay, I'm about to get on the wah bus for just 1 second. I think it has to be said that Big Gay Al is the character that's aged the worst in this movie. I get that people thought he was funny in 99, and he feels really out of date in 2022. South Park's irreverent. We've talked about that. I get it. But this, I watched this scene like 5 times. I kept rewinding it because I was going, oh my God, we're going to get a 1-star review. Like something's going to happen if we talk about it. But every time I watched it, it didn't sound like irreverency. It just sounded like homophobia. And it was the cringiest part of the movie for me, including his entire song.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to get us a 1-star, but I got to be honest. I really do. Today, Big Al, he would get canceled immediately.
Yep.
But back in 99, Big Al was actually praised by GLAAD.
Yeah.
This was like a positive image of an LGBTQ member. Back then, this actually, the first episode he appears in was Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride. Mm-hmm. It's the first episode that was nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Animation. And GLAAD gave it its own award for this episode. So today we're looking at as, yes, this is terrible. But back in the day, it shows you how worse off we were. That this caricature of Big Gay Al, which I thought was funny, was something to be rewarded.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of is that song from The Producers, Make It Gay, right? Like, it's like there used to be a low bar and it was like, oh, well, we're at least talking about gay people. We're not hiding them. We're not sending them to conversion therapy. Yay! Like low bar, right? And I get it. I get that it was funny then. I laughed at it then. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here, guys. I laughed my ass off at it then. It just felt gross on the rewatch.
It's a different time, and I can see that it doesn't hold up as well. I think what holds up worse than Big Al, because like Big D said, it was representation back then, and because the bar was so low, it definitely was seen as a positive thing. But what didn't hold up is something that many movies of this era, especially in the early 2000s, falls victim to, and that is homophobic jokes and using the F word to describe gay people. And there were a couple of those in this movie where I was like, oh, that does not hold up no matter what.
Yeah. But I am shocked that we got to bucket 5 before I talked about something I was offended by, which shows
I didn't think of that.
How good this movie really was in 99 and how smart and actually not harmful at all people like Trey Parker and Matt Stone were or are.
That's what I was going to say. It's Trey and Matt are people that obviously have their hearts in the right place. No one is safe, as you guys said earlier. Everyone gets made fun of. There's commentary on every type of people, no matter who you are, what you look like. And so these guys really do. They have a really funny way of trying to poke holes in the way that people think and the way that they act, but it's everybody. So yeah, I was surprised too. I was kind of scared to watch this movie, wondering how well it would hold up, but it does. One of the really fun parts I thought was, it's like, how are the kids going to get out of this? There's a huge war going on. Satan is coming after them. It's ridiculous. So how are they going to get out of it? And I thought it was genius giving Cartman powers using the V chip that got fried. And I didn't even remember that was a thing, but the way they set it up, and if either of you guys have ever watched Dragon Ball, like Dragon Ball Z, he kind of has the Dragon Ball Z powers, and the sound effects that you hear are like that. And it was a cool way to give him superpowers, but actually have an explanation rather than them just writing up a random way to get out of it.
Well, we've reached the point in the podcast where we're going to give our Shat scores. Just in case you've forgotten, we'll rate this film anywhere between 1 to 5 wipes. So 5 wipes is being executed by Kyle's mom, who, in case you've forgotten, is a big fat bitch. And 1 wipe is being pardoned from eternity in hell with Saddam and instead enjoying all those naked titties in heaven for all time. So, Kevin, as our guest, we are going to start with you.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoy this one and was surprised how good the songs are and how well all the humor held up. It's a sharp commentary on the war on media and profanity. There are so many laughs throughout the film, and it's amazing how good the show and movie were right out of the gate. Like I was saying, from season 1, they had it, and there's a reason why the show's still around. The Streaming Wars movies, I don't know if you guys have seen those, but they're still pumping out movies that are just as sharp, just as hilarious, and I love that the show is able to update with the times. And so this was a really early version of that, but you can see they had it back then, they still have it now, and this movie really holds up. So I'm giving it 1 wipe.
Yeah, I am right there with you, Kevin. I think this movie is so good. The only reason why I don't think it's perfect is that one thing we didn't talk about is I do feel it runs a little long. I think it's a hard thing to sustain the humor and plot line beyond this normal 30-minute episode, which with commercials was like a 20-minute episode. And I think they do a great job through the hour and 5-minute mark. But then it feels a little stretched in parts. But here's the deal. I don't know that there are any smarter people that exist from the 90s than Trey Parker and Matt Stone. These guys were comedy geniuses. The social commentary, just the basic jokes, the way they write them, it's incredible. Is it offensive? Fuck yes, it is. But it was offensive then. And it's an offensiveness that isn't harmful other than to the people who should be harmed, like racist, right? Fuck those people. I love that they make fun of that. Fuck Saddam. Really, fuck the Baldwins too, right? I wasn't feeling bad about that. And Trey Parker and Matt Stone, this is what they are. They are offensive in this way, where they make everybody feel valued by fucking with and satirizing the people that deserve to be satirized. And I prefer this to cancel culture. I prefer putting these people on blast in episodes like the ones with Michael Jackson, like the ones with R. Kelly, like this movie. That's what I prefer. I think they're brilliant. I'm going to go a little bit better than you, Kevin. I personally think this is a 0.5 wipe movie.
So for me, I'm torn here, because you guys have made some strong cases on why this is a better movie than I feel it is, but I got to stick with my gut. I think it's a 1.5 wipe movie. Yes, I think it was revolutionary comedy in '99. It pushed the boundaries of the MPAA. It showed the hypocrisy in their rating system. But today, 20 years later, I think we've seen better satirical cartoons and comedies. It's shown what's possible. They're more nuanced. They're more meta. They're less. This movie seemed raw and just unfunny sometimes, in just the way that they were being overtly pushing the limits. I'm a huge fan of The Family Guy or American Dad, Rick and Morty. I know Ash and Gene hate it. Or another Comedy Central, which was Drawn Together. I liked back in the day. I haven't seen it in a while. But I thought those were funnier. To me, this was just more rough around the edges. I didn't think it was that groundbreaking. It almost seems tame today compared to some of the stuff that even South Park has done. So for me, 1.5 wipes. Great to go back and watch it. And just thinking it's 20 years later, I'll give it that.
The fact that you said American Dad is funnier than South Park is as egregious as your Red Dawn score.
Go back and watch the episode in The Rapture when they mock established religions. They have a great Christmas episode. I really enjoy that.
When they make the American Dad movie, you can come here and rate that.
I will.
And I will say, Family Guy, I love. You didn't mention BoJack Horseman. I think BoJack Horseman is brilliant, right? But I think none of those would exist without South Park. But
that's the reason. I know, not to cut off and go back into it, but that's the thing, is that this was 1999 and they paved the way for all these other shows. So it's really hard to look at it through a current prism and say, oh yeah, this isn't, because I recognize that it does seem tame by comparison, but back in 99, this movie was doing a lot for these things, and even things like Ash said, like Deadpool. So you got to give this movie credit. They can't help it was made 23 years ago, but it was.
So, Kevin, to your thought, when we go back and rate the impact of entire series, I will definitely give this a 0.5 wipe for impact on comedy. But as far as this movie is standalone, I got to go with 1.5.
Fair enough.
Well, with a 1.5 from Big D, a 1 from Kevin, and a 0.5 from me, that is a total wipe score of 3, which gives us an average wipe score of 1.
So, Ash, with the wipe score of 1 wipe. That now ties this in the 47 spot with a lot of great films. Empire Strikes Back, Conan the Barbarian, Rounders, The Terminator, Back to the Future Part 2, Toy Story, Tremors, Sling Blade, Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, and Blade. We have got a big block of great movies here. When you get anything, I think, under one wipe, you're talking about films that had an impact, that are remembered these 40 years later. So I don't think that is a slight against the movie.
No, I'm comfortable with it. All right, Big D, what do we got coming up next week?
So, Ash, next week, Truman Burbank doesn't realize everything in his life is a massive TV set. Executive director Christof orchestrates The Truman Show, a live broadcast of Truman's every move captured by hidden cameras. Christof tries to control Truman's mind, even removing his true love, Sylvia, from the show and replacing her with Meryl. As Truman gradually discovers the truth, however, he must decide whether to act on it. And this was commissioned by Braylon D, came out in 1998. And I think in the world now of reality TV, I think this movie is a perfect review for this time.
I just finished my rewatch of this, and I forgot how good of a movie this was. Give me dramatic Jim Carrey any day. Well, before we go, Kevin, do you want to tell us a little bit about what else you're doing and the amazing podcast that you're a regular on?
Oh, well, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I always have a blast showing up on your show. So thank you for the invite. I'm always happy to do it anytime that you need me. But I have a podcast called Real Spoilers. If you haven't listened to it yet, we're usually covering the biggest movie of the weekend. So the largest theatrical release, and we spoil the crap out of it, just like in the title. So we recommend you either have seen the movie or you don't care about spoilers. We do that every week. New episodes usually on Thursday. We just hit episode 701 last week. So
wow.
We're getting up there. Yeah. So over 700, but yeah, we have a blast doing that, and would love it if everyone checked it out. And we do have some crossover. We have some fans that found me from doing these guest spots. So I appreciate that. And I'm always happy to get more listeners.
Well, Kevin, we always say you're the nicest guy in all of podcasting, and you make us all look really bad.
No, Kevin is the professional podcaster.
No, he's so much nicer.
Like,
than
whenever
us.
I feel Ash, like, oh, we're stretching the limits on what's possible for our time. We're doing a TV show, 3 episodes a week, and a movie. And wow, we just hit, 300 episodes. Kevin comes in here and just makes us realize we're slackers,
amateurs.
Ash.
Oh,
what's wrong?
No, not at all. Not at all. We did 2 episodes a week for a while, so that got our numbers up. I mean, they were still episodes, but we kind of padded it there with the double episodes. We've cut back a bit from that, but still, it's quite the accomplishment to look back and say 10 years of podcasting. It's wild. So thank you to everyone who listens and has come over from even this show and checked us out. It means a lot, and we wouldn't be doing it for this long if people weren't listening. So.
No, and all joking aside, their show is fantastic. All of you out there, if you are a movie lover, go find them. They actually have real commentary and know what they're talking about. They're absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and I think their strength is just the different angles that they come at films. And that in an age where most podcasts are heavy now with ads and mid-roll, like reads, and just paywalls, Kev, you guys do it right. And a lot of times when there's a go-to movie, you're the first podcast that I go to. I know Gene's the same. So everybody out there, give them a listen. Well worth it.
If I'm wondering whether I should go see a film or not, I listen to your episode first so I can figure it out.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much to this week's commissioners, Marco P. and Flavor Dave. And thanks so much to next week's commissioner, Braylon D. This concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us at host@shatthemovies.com. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buy our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. You can find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D Dick Ebert and Kevin Brackett, I'm Ash, and be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Comments are still headed. What else is on?
Yeah, let's see what else is.
Coming to you now from the largest studio ever constructed, it's The Truman Show!
Yeah! Good morning!
Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
What if? No scripts, no cue cards.
Morning, Spencer. How's it going?
What if you were watched every moment of your life?
How many cameras you got there in that town?
5,000.
I believe Truman is the first child to have been legally adopted by a corporation.
That's correct.
Brilliant.
What if everyone you knew was pretending?
Hi, honey. Look what I got at the checkout. Dishwasher safe.
That's amazing.
What if your world was make-believe?
Cue the sun. While the world he inhabits is counterfeit.
I'm not allowed to talk to you.
That's how I look. Not your type. There's nothing fake about Truman himself.
What if you didn't know it? Until now.
A lot of strange things have been happening.
Stand by ring cam.
Is he looking at us?
Does he think he knows? I think I'm mixed up in something. Something big.
We accept the reality with which we're presented.
Everybody's pretending, Truman. Get out of here. Come and find me. Truman?
Anything happen?
No.
You may find yourself in another part of the world.
It's like the whole world revolves around me. Everybody seems to be in on it.
I'm going away for a while.
You may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful wife. You may ask yourself, how did I get here?
I'm not in on it, Truman, because the last thing that I would ever do is lie to you.
Fade up music. That's our hero shot.
He's gone.
Okay? Yes!
Want to do it again?
No!
Find him. Truman, where are you going?
You can do it.
How do we stop him?
Give me some lightning.
Is that the best you can do?
Cut transmission!
I like your pen. I was wondering that myself.
Jim Carrey. The Truman Show. Watch what happens.
All right, Big D, what do we got coming up next week?
So Gene, next week.
I'm not Gene.
Oh, Jen,
Just so
look at
you
me.
know, I'm
Oh,
Ash.
you're not. Yes,
Hi.
yes.